amended by City Council to the resolution.
Only City Council, though?
Yes.
Okay.
So the concept that you are speaking about, sir, is captured in the ordinance. The laundry list read by Roxanne is not there, but that list needs to be approved by City Council and can be amended by City Council.
Only City Council, not the zoning officer, the city manager, or anybody like that. Recommendations can come from them. That's fine.
Recommendations can come from them, and field operations of observing and directing others can come out of the engineer's office, but the establishment of the regulation has to be approved here by City Council.
Okay.
That's the way it's laid out right now.
Okay, thank you.
So, one of the things that I think it's important for us to also discuss is how those regulations, how they exist right now, and are there some improvements based on the comments that we heard to how we operationalize this plan once it's in place. One of the concerns and I've actually asked Roxanne about this, we've talked about it, the work that's been done so far has been done by an arborist. We don't have a definition of what a contractor is in the ordinance, nor do we have it in the procedures. So we should define who is qualified to do this type of work, and if we require an arborist to do it, then that should be part of
license,
that procedure, as opposed to, anybody who has a contractor's license could, in theory, apply for the permit on behalf of the homeowner and start cutting. So I think that may be a definition or something that either it's in the ordinance or it's in the procedures that we define who that contractor is. The other point that we may want to do is the city engineer, I know, meets the contractor, in all cases it's been the arborist, on site, and they discuss the plan of how it's going to be cut. I think that's an important thing to have in place, that is done, and we may want to formalize that a little more by asking the arborist or the contractor to give us a plan. You don't have to identify every bayberry bush, but the area that is being, whether it's done by an engineer or in consultation with, that there's an actual defined area of where you're cutting and the height of where you're cutting. One of the issues you have is that dunes are up and down. They're not a uniform flat surface, so that 8 feet has to be measured randomly throughout the process. And that's something, it shouldn't be a straight cut, it has to be a trimming that is in line with the nature of how the tree is, or the bush is supposed to look. So it's much more complex than, and that's the way it has been done for the most part that I'm aware of. John, you've seen these sites once they're cut?
They've all grown back very well.
We haven't, the areas that have grown back, and they've grown back stronger. I said the evidence has been that this has been done for over 30 years and we didn't lose any dune area to Sandy. And I can tell you, I was on the beach with John and Jim Bennett right after Sandy passed, and our dunes held up very well. So this isn't anticipating doing anything to weaken the dunes. It's a trimming of vegetation. So I think we need to make sure that that's clearly stated in the procedures, and those definitions are there. Who do we want doing this work? Well, the question, I heard you, Lisa, and you're out of order. The work has to be done by somebody who has the training, the background, and the ability to do that type of work going forward.
Licensed.
Licensed.
I would rather see an arborist do it than just our public works guys. No offense, John.
Been flamed.
Well, as John knows, he assured me that those trees that they trim will grow back on the fence circle and all that.
Yeah.
They did. They did. Okay, and any other public comment? Yes, Bobby.
I never did. Bobby DeLucre, 7 Whalerman Cove. I've never spoken at a council meeting, but I I took pictures of this in April, and it was between 24th and 27th Streets. The trees were clear-cut. People were calling me and taking videos and sending them to me, and this is what it looks like. I don't think that's what an arborist does. Is it because there was an arborist that did this before, or? And also,
That was back in the spring, Bob? Or
I
that's
showed
now?
you the video, yeah. What,
That's
So
the current picture, or that's the...
that's from April.
Right. Do you have a current picture?
No. Mm-mm. I was just wondering, so it's only people that live on the beach block who can get permits to have,
They're adjacent property owners.
okay, so if somebody, like, 2 blocks down doesn't, 2 doors down, or somebody where I live on 7 Wellman Cove doesn't like something, our rights aren't the same as the people who live on the beach block, right?
You're saying I'm not
If
sure.
if I, living at 7 Wellman Cove, decided that I didn't like the way something looked, if the path wasn't wide enough, I wouldn't have the same right as a person that lives on the beach.
You wouldn't have any right unless you got a
I wouldn't have
permit.
any right.
Right.
I couldn't get a permit,
You couldn't, no.
because
According to
I-
this ordinance.
Right,
And that's been the practice in the past.
right.
So if
I don't
it-
understand why a person...
If we allowed everybody to
Right.
have access to a permit, then you would agree with it?
No, I don't agree with it.
You would have the
No.
right. You would have the right then. Is that what you're saying? You don't
I
have
don't
the right, but
understand why it's somebody's right who lives there and not, I guess,
Oh, I
yeah.
thought you were just saying, I didn't have the right, but they have the right, so I thought maybe you were saying
I don't
that
understand why
you had the right, it would
they
be
can make a
okay.
decision that affects the quality of my life because I enjoy the dunes look like,
Right.
I guess is what I'm saying.
All right.
And also, how are you going to measure, like, how do they measure whether or not this hurts the dunes? How do you measure whether or not cutting the bayberry trees back damages the wildlife or...
Whether a bayberry is 10 feet or 8 feet? If it's
No, I mean, like, how do you know they're not,
strength
not
of the
like, there's
roots?
not birds living in the bayberries and they cut them down? The nests are there. I mean, I don't know if they do, but you said that you wanted to measure...
Measure the height.
No, measure the effects of doing it.
Well, I can tell you that we don't have data that shows that it's harmful, but we don't have data that shows that it's not either way. But what we have is anecdotal evidence that the dune system performed very well during Sandy, and these procedures have been done for years. So it's...
The dune system, but how about the wildlife?
How did the wildlife do?
How does it affect the
We
wildlife?
have abundant wildlife. In fact, we have almost, an overwhelming amount of wildlife right now since the state decided to lower the number of foxes. I don't know if anyone's seeing the increase in some of the things that we see running around the island, including possums and other things that we haven't seen in years.
And the possums live in the bayberry?
They do live in the dune system.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Lynn Heiligman, 13 McDermott Place. You say you have anecdotal evidence to support that the root system has not been damaged, and you have anecdotal, we don't know what the long-term effects are of messing with the foliage.
I asked
What
it-
are they? You say this has been in existence for 30 years. 30 years is long enough to know. You put this into effect, and
Well, I didn't
people
put it
come.
into effect. Probably one of the
Okay.
few things that I didn't put into effect.
Council puts this into
Right.
effect, and more people come, and more trees are destroyed or cut down and stuff, and what do we have left? There's no way to know, is there?
Well, once again, what I said was, we know that the dune system performed very well during Sandy. Now, the area that was cut down between 24th and 27th, that area has regenerated over the summer. John, I don't know what it looks,
Yeah, it's regenerated.
I saw it the
very
other
well over
day.
summer. Yes.
looks like a normal dune area at this point. Do we have any pictures of it right now?
Probably healthier than it was before.
Can we ask somebody who looks at it every day?
I can tell you personally that I'll be abstaining on this matter because it directly affects me, and I'm not going to speak as to the mechanics of this ordinance. So I can tell you that area right there with that picture, that's going around is that ground vegetation is green and thick and full as a cameo. It's probably even better that it's down by the soil as well as the area above it.
Okay.
And it's not clear-cut neither. Clear-cut is down to the ground. That is not clear-cut.
I still don't think we have any idea if this becomes an ordinance,
It-
it
it-
becomes more
It's been in-
common practice.
It's
of what
already,
gonna
it's
be.
already being done.
But it's not an ordinance, is it?
Yes.
It is not an ordinance at this point, but it is already being done. Yes, sir.
Hi, Jim Raschiel, 1301 Ocean. Just to follow up on something I was saying before, I'm still a little bit concerned about the stumping of the pines, the black pines. And did I hear in the regulation that the pines that when they're stumped must be replaced
Yes.
by a
Yes.
February? I did hear that. Okay. It may also be a good idea to include in that regulation some kind of restriction as to the amount of the pines that can be stumped at any one time, possibly, I don't know, 20% at any given, say within a year,
I think,
to prevent, some kind of a calamity occurring where, you don't have a root system when you really need it.
and Jim, you bring up a good point, which kind of leads back to the discussion. I think we need a plan.
Right.
I think, the arborist has to come in with a plan, actually, what are you cutting? And at what heights, and as I said, you can't identify every bayberry bush, but you should be able to identify that area, and your point is well taken. You don't want, if there is a clump of Japanese black pine, you probably don't want to take all of them out, but you
Right.
can take a couple out.
In a gradual way over a
Exactly.
period of years. I like the suggestion about defining what you mean by a licensed contractor as well. Make that a little more.
Yeah, it has to
Concrete.
be an arborist or a landscape architect or some license that has a direct impact on vegetation as opposed, you could be any kind of contractor.
Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any other public comment? Okay, I'm going to close the public portion. I'll open it up for council discussion.
All right. Mayor, before we get going, like I said earlier, I'm going to be abstaining on this. I'm not going to speak to the mechanics of the ordinance. However, earlier during the public comment session, it was brought up about the 26th Street area that there was a resident there. The residents didn't come out to help with the flower beds. And I can say that there's one house for the longest period of time, actually it's not even there no more, it was abandoned. And there's another house on 26th Street that borders this area. And whether that's the house they're talking about, that's where I happen to live. And if there's a question about volunteering your time or helping out, I will say that it was some years ago. My wife, for starters, she had a friend who was involved in the garden club. She helped her out a few times. I can't remember who her friend was. I myself have planted some of these. The one time I went out there with the plum trees and I helped out planting some of the plum trees. I'd like to do that again. That was a nice thing. But if there's any, and I personally thank the people, and they're out there, these people who work on these flower beds and things of that nature. They do a beautiful job all around our island, not just in that area, but all over. And if there's like any question about someone volunteering, there's a few people in this room that could back up what I'm saying. I have not only just put in hundreds of hours, but it's in like 4 digits, the hours that I've put in over the years volunteering, helping with youth sports. I still officiate. My kids have kind of aged out a little bit. I even continued to coach after that, and now that they're done with that, I help out at the Yelk. So, and all that money, the money that they generate and the money that goes towards charities, the handicapped, the vets, I'm there for that, and I put in as many hours as I can there. So, and I also get my little garden club card too, because I do a little work on my own house, which is in that area, and I like to make that area look as beautiful as possible. So if there's any implication, I just want it to be clear as possible that I've done plenty, I've put in plenty of times as volunteering and helping out this beautiful community that we have. Thank you.
Okay, any council discussion?
Yeah, if nobody else wants to go, I'll jump in. When I came on council in 2011, shortly after I took office, probably early 2012, was the first time I had occasion to have to deal as a councilperson with an application for what we euphemistically call dune maintenance. I opposed it then, and I asked then, what is the public purpose? What's the public interest that we're serving by doing this? I didn't get an answer then. The issue came up again a couple of years later. Same question was asked. Once again, absolute silence, no explanation of what is the public interest that we're serving. I get the private interest, and that's nice. And if I was in that position, maybe I would also want to see the city do this for me, but that's a private interest. There's no question. We're dealing with the dune field. It is public property, and we can't and shouldn't do anything unless we can articulate a public interest that's going to be served by what we're doing. And to get there, you have to understand what are the competing interests and the competing alternatives. We haven't done that, and we haven't had any discussion about that in the past. We didn't have any discussion of it 2 weeks ago at our council meeting, and nothing that's been said yet tonight has identified anything close to a public purpose. So, the fact that we've had a process in the past, whether it was for 7 years or 30 years or 100 years, doesn't make any difference. That's a red herring. If you don't have a public purpose for what you're doing, the fact that you're doing it doesn't give you any additional bootstrapping because you do it for a long time. There has to be an articulable public interest. I can articulate the public interest in not touching the dune system, and they range from flood protection to species habitat to keeping sand from blowing off the beach and onto the properties on the landward side of the beach, to the aesthetics of having a natural, attractive dune vegetation system. What is the public interest that we're serving by what amounts to random, but it wouldn't make much difference if it wasn't random, cutting of vegetation? Is there, and the answer to this question is no, is there anything that's been presented to us ever that is credible evidence to document that, in fact, there is some kind of issue with maintaining the dunes or with allowing the dunes to continue in their natural vegetative state that impacts negatively on a public interest? There has never been anything presented. We like to refer or allude all the time to Dr. Farrell and Mr. Lomax. Well, we don't have anything here that says, because of the presence or the size of bayberry or the presence or size of Japanese black pine or any other species of vegetation that we find in the dune, that there has been and will be an articulable, defined, identifiable negative impact on any public interest. That evidence doesn't exist. We make stuff up. We have anecdotes. We admit we have no data. It's been going on for 30 years, but we have no data one way or the other than the fact that the dune system, we say, worked during Sandy, which it did, but that doesn't mean that there isn't damage that's being done by the trimming, whether it's in the past program or in a future program, but more importantly, it doesn't get you to the starting point. What is the public interest in doing that? If we leave things in their natural state and never trim them, I can tell you, in a best-case scenario, if you trim stuff, you're not doing any more damage than the fact that you're going to have something which is aesthetically displeasing, and not just because of the look once you've cut things back, but also because of the fact that it is random, that it's going to be a piece here and a piece there, and it's haphazardly determined where things are going to be cut and to what extent. So the public interest, I'll speak for myself, and I'm a member of the public, and I own those dunes as much as anybody else, including the people who live along the dunes, every bit as much. I have an interest in seeing them stay in their natural state. So why does my interest not count at least as much as the interest of the people who, for their purely private reasons, want to create better view corridors for themselves from their residences? So that leads me to the next point, which is, we also talk a lot about the DEP and what DEP will let you do and not let you do. Let's be clear, DEP does not require us to remove anything. It does not require us to take out or to trim black pines or bayberries or any other of what we call invasive species. An invasive species simply means a non-native species. If we had a dune system full of non-native species, DEP does not require us to do anything with it. It's only if you propose to do removals that DEP has regulations that concern which particular things can be removed and in what fashion. But as a starting point, DEP is not making us do this. DEP's regulations do not require us to do anything. Common sense doesn't require us to do anything to this dune field. It is not impacting negatively on any public interest. It has a small impact on a small number of people. And again, I get that people have their private interest, but we can't and shouldn't elevate that private interest above the legitimate public interest, all of which has been discussed by the people here tonight, and all of which we know by common sense, simply to serve an interest of a small number of people, which doesn't correlate to and doesn't advance any public interest. We also haven't talked about the beach management plan. We have a beach management plan, as we all know. Beach management plan is an agreement that we have with DEP, which is it's kind of the touchstone of our beach activities. Has anyone bothered to check whether the beach management plan would let us do this plan or any plan? A procedural point, perhaps, but maybe a kind of important one, since DEP does have such exhaustive control over our beach system and our dune system by reason of the beach management plan. Person mentioned that we could become a maritime forest. Why is that bad? Why would it be bad for the dune system to grow in its natural way and ultimately become thicker, denser? There's no evidence that I've seen or that I've heard talked about that by not trimming the dunes, we somehow have resulted in a compromised or weakened dune system. Quite to the contrary. You can go to the places that haven't been trimmed and see how densely vegetated they are. I can walk down the paths and see the birds that are in the tree canopy. You can see evidence of the many different animals that are living in the dune system. The best case scenario when you trim is that you don't worsen that situation. That's the best case scenario. The worst case scenario, or a worse case scenario than that, is that you are in fact going to do it, whether it's by reason of the contractor simply being in the dune or the fact that we're cutting things which have a definite aesthetic negative impact. For the short term, perhaps, things grow back, I get that. But why should we have to endure a negative aesthetic impact for the short term when there's no public benefit to that happening? Why do we designate, and how legally do we designate the classes of people that we're proposing to designate as being able to do this? What is it about mere proximity that creates, I think one of the comments, and I don't recall from whom it came, but here on council, talked about the people who are impacted by the condition on the dunes. Well, there's more than one person impacted. It's not just the person who lives nearby or who can see it. It's everybody else who, again, owns those dunes, to the same extent as anybody who happens to live closer maybe than I do or someone else does to the dunes. We have an interest in those dunes, and I'm articulating my interest, which is in leaving them in their natural state and not having to look at sawed-off trees when there is no benefit to me or to the public at large in doing that. So let's not forget that people impacted, that comprises a class larger than the people who live nearby. And as a legal question, then it follows, why do we think that we can give greater rights to the people who happen to live closer? And it's not all along the dunes, as we know, because we would allow people who live separated from the dunes by a public parking lot or other public facility, or even people who, if you think of the example of the 1600 block of Ocean Avenue, who are on the other side of Ocean Avenue and separated by a parking lot. And that happened in the past. A person or persons did apply in the past and did cut down a number of trees in the dune field between 16th and 17th Street, and that person lived on the far side of Ocean Avenue. So how do we do that? How is it that we just artificially, by reason of geographic proximity, decide you, individual, have greater rights in this piece of public property than anybody else? I use the example, I posed as a question last time. Nobody responded to it. How about if you live on the golf course? If I live on the golf course, do I have greater rights than anybody else to actually go out there and do something to the golf course, to add or remove vegetation? Of course not. Do we give the people who live near our ball fields the right to go out and do anything on the ball fields in terms of physical changes? Again, of course not. This is no different than that. So I'd love to hear somebody, please, after 7 years now, could somebody articulate for me a coherent public interest in allowing private parties to randomly remove vegetation?
Okay, any other council comments?
Yeah, actually, I have some comments. I think one of the things we have to look at is that we're not a one-size-fits-all community. There's different needs in different areas. Even if you look at the makeup of council, there's 3 members here who represent the island at large, and then there's ward representatives for each of the different wards. When you look at the golf course, there's often times that we've actually moved or repositioned tees on the golf course to try to help with homes, or damage from homes. There's times we've actually worked and cut down the vegetation there to beautify and to clean and to make things better. You look at the bulkheads. There's people who live around the edges of the island and live on the bays, and we've actually instituted a program where people can get low-interest loans for the city to help raise their bulkheads. So I think, when you look at this idea of, dune maintenance, I think it falls in that idea that we try to create an environment that's accommodating to the people of our community, because everything on this island affects us in different ways. For me, I don't consider myself an expert, but I've spent most of my life on the beach. 19 of those years as a lifeguard with Brigantine Beach Patrol. When you sit out on that beach, you actually have the opportunity to sit there 8, 9, 10 hours a day and observe everything around you. When we talk about this practice has been in place for over 30 years. In the 30 years that I've seen, that I can remember being out there, I've watched our beaches grow. I've watched the dune fields grow. I've watched the vegetation grow. I've seen many, many changes, all of which are positive. We talk about the ultimate test of our dune system. I think Sandy proves a big point that those dunes held strong. These practices are not new. What we're trying to do is bring up to code and bring up to date exactly what we're doing. You hear in one instance, some of the public comment is that, dune maintenance shouldn't be done at all. And in the next instance, you're hearing people saying, well, listen, the city should solely do the dune maintenance, or we should do the entire island. So I think there's a lot of diversity in the comments that are here. But I do agree with our mayor, and I agree with people who have commented, is that we should have somebody who's an expert in these areas, to have an arborist, to make sure that what's done is in the best interest of the city. And I can't help but think about, too, if you look at some of our state forests and our state parks, how many of those state forests and state parks do controlled burns in order to help the overall safety and overall health of those parks? And I wonder what kind of impact that has on the environment, what kind of impact that has on the creatures that are living there. So in one instance, we see where there's a huge benefit that it helps the overall safety of the population around, and also the overall health of those forests. For us, what we've seen over the past 30 years is a dune system that is very, very strong. I've had the opportunity as the chairman of the beach committee to meet with the Army Corps of Engineers and talk about our beaches and the success of our beaches and how actually they use Brigantine beaches as the model for how our beaches should be. They actually looked and measured the impact that Sandy had here in our beaches and our dune system, did exactly what they were meant to do. So I think there's a fear amongst people that somehow by doing this process or creating an ordinance on this process that you're going to somehow harm the dune system or take something away from one neighbor and not give it to another. But it's not about that. When you talk about the public good and our thing that we're trying to focus on is making sure that the dunes stay healthy. And that is our goal with this ordinance. Does it add to some of the beautification of the city? Yes, it does. But there are many things we do in the city to add to the beautification and add to the overall value. But in this instance, we're trying to make sure that the practices that are in place are up to date, safe, and will maintain the integrity of our dune system and our community.
We asked Dr. Farrell to take a look at this process, and he actually went back and looked at the the DEP rules in New Jersey Administrative Code, and what he said is, I found that vegetation trimming, cutting, or pruning is allowed. Removal of invasive species such as Phragmites, Japanese pines or sumac is not only allowed, but encouraged. Landscape contractors planted thousands of Japanese pines along New Jersey coastal zone in the 20th century before we cared how they grew. Lomax Associates in Cape May contracted with Avalon Borough to study the elimination of pine trees from the dunes at a minimum. This was successfully done in large part by individual homeowners complaining about the view and the pine needles. The general beach dune maintenance does not address invasive species removal directly, but the rules do allow cutting problem vegetation primarily to clear a private or public pathway for beach access, which we already do. Their invasive plant literature emphasizes not planting any, but does not go into much discussion about direct removal other than Phragmites. The Brigantine Dunes probably don't contain much Phragmites, however. He mentions that he had a conversation with a DEP commissioner. They told him that bayberry and pine trees could be pruned for sure, cut down if there was outsized difference in the height or spread compared to normal vegetation, or removed entirely if invasive, referring to the Japanese pine specifically. So he does make some recommendations about limiting the frequency of private action, specify the only vegetation substantially blocking access or general view can be cut, and require the owners fund the process and remove the cut vegetation, and the permit from the city is required. I won't go into everything that was said here, but once again, I think there's a lot of misinformation out there. No one is talking about cutting dunes, and that's what we keep hearing repeatedly. Talking about is trimming vegetation. And I have to and I don't want to respond to everything you said, but there's a bit of irony here. As you were a council member and you were in the majority, this issue never came up, and that practice was going on. You had the votes at one time to change this process completely and change the ordinance, and no one uttered a word. So we came through this process to bring it in line with the ordinance that's in place, and now we have all of this energy that's been spent by a lot of good people thinking that the dunes were going to be destroyed, which is absolutely untrue. There's going to be a trimming of dunes. There's going to be of dune vegetation that is going to be at a height of 8 feet. I don't think a bayberry bush at 8 feet, first of all, that's extraordinarily high for a bayberry bush, and it's going to be trimmed in compliance with regulations that are being put in place. I think, once again, it's a practice that has been done. We have seen the results of it not have a negative impact on the dunes. And, is it in part to restore view for people who are in that area? And the answer is yes. It is done in part for that. However, you have to also look at the fact that people bought oceanfront property, and they are maintaining those properties. And in many cases, the vegetation that's growing into their properties has to be trimmed. The question was asked about the golf course. I live on the golf course. Now, I'll be the first one to tell you, I have been on the other side of my fence cutting down stuff that's growing into my yard. Usually it's some kind of a weed or something of that nature, because it has to be done. I don't call the golf course and say, cut down the weeds that are growing into my yard. I go out and do it myself. And of course, the golf course area, we're talking about weeds, the dunes are much more sensitive, but at the same time, if it's done in a way where it's permitted, it's defined by whom it is being done, a licensed arborist, someone who knows what they're doing, and it's done in a way that's responsible, I don't see the harm. In fact, I agree with Vince. I think we're actually strengthening the dune system by doing it.
There's a lot of good stuff that was said here tonight, and I agree with a lot of the things that were said. And after hearing everything that's been said, I think we really need to take a closer look at maybe who should do the work, if we agree that the work should be done, I like the idea of limiting pines, the percentage of pine trees in an area. So, Deputy Mayor Simpson made a suggestion about more definition in the ordinance. Phil made a suggestion about something about who should be able to do the work. So, I believe that we should hold off on this right now and discuss this and do a little more research till we firm it up a little bit more and agree what could go on, go forward. I don't know if anyone else agrees with me, but...
You're actually asking to change the content of the ordinance, but not the purpose of the ordinance.
Change it, firm it up a little bit more to define certain things in it before we vote on this.
I like the idea of like, put a percentage of the pine trees that are able to be touched. I like the idea of...
They're looking to put more definitive content in the ordinance about percentage of vegetation and things of that nature.
Pine trees.
Which would probably alter what's been introduced.
If that is what council wishes to do, it can be done. I mean, there's no prohibition that would prohibit the putting more detail as to the nature of cutting and how much cutting and what pieces of vegetation can be cut. You can do that.
Who can do
The
it?
other alternative you have in front of you, the ordinance as it is drafted right now, has council controlling the list of maintenance tasks and maintenance functions. You control that and you memorialize that as part of the application process. That is already provided for here. If you want to put that detail in the ordinance, you can, but that, I mean, the ordinance isn't moving tonight. We'd have to go back and redo the ordinance.
Listening to everybody here and seeing what Dr. Farrell said, we've had the specialists, I don't think that defining some more of the things in here that concerns about who does the work, percentages of pine trees that are taken out at one time. I don't understand why we can't table this like for tonight, not change it, but just to discuss it more. And
I make a recommendation if you want to get to the more of the criteria that you approve this ordinance. It has a 20-day period after publication, and come back in the next meeting with a resolution that defines the permitting process and who will do it and what can be done. And that gives you approval on the resolution and the process, and it also gives you a much more flexible avenue in the future if it needs to be changed.
And if it were not, if we missed the date, the 20-day time limit, we could reintroduce it after the 20-day time limit, right?
Well, my intention is not to, my intention would be to bring a resolution back to you at the next meeting. I don't think the things that you've been talking about are all that significant. We can put in there more definitive that they have to be a licensed arborist or whatever, you know, we want to say it is. We can put more parameters about stumping, and it also gives you the flexibility in the future to pull back if you decide that things need to be reorganized. Definitely up to you.
I would like to see you pass the ordinance tonight, to move the resolution along, but on the next meeting, either have an arborist here or Dr. Fowler or somebody from Stockton to give us a little bit more information so we can add to our list of stuff, or convince us not to do it at all. So if we get more information and we just...
Yes, and
then
I had asked
we could
the
all,
arborist to come.
if we had to, we could vote no next time. So if we move this along have a professional here, either arborist, somebody from Stockton, or both, you know, even if we had to hire somebody, to come in and talk about this.
Well, I think it's important to have them help develop the rules.
That's what I mean.
Procedures.
That's what I'm saying.
That are in place and react to the ones that we have right now.
Correct.
I think we need to define who the you know, who's doing the cutting and what areas and all that.
I think we have one that's been doing it all the time.
He was more than happy to come to a meeting.
It was only one arborist, I think, the people...
There's only been one landscaping company that has been doing
getting
the
the
cutting.
permits and everything else. Again, it's, you know, it's been going on since the 80s. DEP, you know, I dealt with those people for 35 years. If they have no comment about it, it's got to be fine. Dr. Fowler, I know he's the highest regard in this area, maybe in the state, maybe in the country. I don't know. But he's up there. So, and if you don't want to do it, if Dr. Glazer wants to do it, and Bob McDonald doesn't want to do it, they don't have to do it. Nobody's forcing them to do it. So, if we can get an arborist or somebody from Stockton to come and ask the questions with these people in here, I think that would make it a lot cleaner, but I do believe we have to continue to move it forward.
Okay, is there any further discussion? Okay, seeing none, could we have roll call, please?
It's a process that's been in place for many years, and we're just formalizing the process. I do think that there are a few changes that need to be made, and I'm willing to go say yes tonight and then revisit it with some changes next time. Yes. Reardon?
Well, like Karen just said, and we've heard all night tonight, this ordinance has been in place for over 30 years. Like I said before, a lot of good questions, a lot of good things said tonight. But we're amending this ordinance that's been in place for 30 years. So for now, I'm going to vote yes, go along with this, and then we can clean it up later.
Haney?
Abstain for reasons previously given.
Jalutri?
Ooh, it's a tough one. Still no public purpose articulated. Still no public purpose articulated by anyone. And now we're going to spend some money, we're going to bring in an arborist or Dr. Farrell to try and bootstrap this thing up to make it sound like it makes sense. It doesn't matter if we've been doing it for 20 minutes or 20 years or 20 decades. If you don't have a public purpose that you can identify, you shouldn't be doing it. It doesn't make any sense. And you can't sanitize it by saying, well, we've been doing it and we're just tweaking it and we want to get all the best procedures in there. It's not a question of procedures. It's a question of why the hell are we even doing it? Absolutely no.
I just want to make a comment on that, because you say no public comment there. As far as no public purpose, the Stockton University Coastal Research Center has been in place since 1981. Dr. Farrell was founded it, so I respect what he gave us in his report and all. So as far as no public purpose, I don't necessarily agree with that.
Sarah?
I didn't know if Mike was done yet.
Oh, sorry.
First of all, I want to thank everybody for coming out tonight. I think it's really important for everybody to be involved in the process, and it's great to hear from people from the community. As I've said before, one of our main goals with this is to update our ordinances, to update the processes that we have here in the city. One of the things that we actually designed the ordinance, and you can actually see the effect of it here tonight, is to have the flexibility to make changes, or to, obviously to make changes or make things better as we get new information or we hear from the public. So for me, I'm going to vote yes.
Simpson?
I lived here all my life. I would never harm the dune system we have in place. It has grown over the years. Trimming bushes, if we were talking about taking them out or anything, I'd be right there with Rick, but I don't see no harm in trimming these things, and I think it would actually make them be better and live longer. So that's a yes.
Chair Gunther?
We have an incredible dune system that has grown tremendously over the years, and I saw it firsthand. Like Vince, I spent 14 years sitting on the beach watching us move lifeguard huts every year because the dunes continued to grow so you could actually see the water.
How about me?
And Andy as well. But I can tell you that what has been done in the past has not in any way harmed our dune system and has followed the same procedure that has been talked about that can only be strengthened by some of the discussion we had tonight. This, I think, when we look at it and we're objective about what the results have been over that period of time, we really have not seen any of this have a harmful effect on the dunes. In fact, there may be even an argument that it strengthened the vegetation as you cut and trim vegetation, often it comes back even stronger. So I am in favor of us moving forward with this ordinance. I'm also in favor of us strengthening our procedures going forward. And for the folks who've only moved to Brigantine in the last few years and see the dune system as they are right now, to give you a little bit of context, when they put the jetties in and we had no dunes back in the 60s, the elevation of our beach, now when I talk about elevation, the actual how high the beach is compared to what it was then, as a small child, you couldn't see over those jetties from one block to the next. That's how far up our beach has come up. We've lost the length of our beach, but we have the elevation of the beach has come up tremendously over the years. And the dune system is one of the best in New Jersey when you look at how it's performed in the storms that we've had. So none of us on council would do anything to harm the dunes, but we have to take a reasonable and rational approach to this, and also, as has been said, accommodate a lot of different interests when we look at this ordinance. So it will get stronger as we go forward, and like Vince, I want to thank everyone for participating.
That's a yes.
That's a yes.
Motion carried.
Thank you, Lynn. Okay, we're going to move on now to the ordinance number 24. It's the public hearing and adoption of a bond ordinance. Bond ordinance appropriating $942,455 and authorizing the issuance of up to the $942,445 in bonds or notes of the City of Brigantine to cover the city's share of the costs associated with the residential structure elevation project to be undertaken by the City of Brigantine in the County of Atlantic. We have a motion and second, please.
I'll make that motion.
Second.
Okay, at this time, I'll open the meeting for public hearing on bond ordinance number 24. Just for informational purposes for the members of the public, the City of Brigantine is a grant recipient for a FEMA grant that will fund the elevation of 6 homes in the City of Brigantine. As part of the grant process, we have to have funds in place, but the city will be reimbursed for all of those funds as this grant proceeds through its life cycle. So this is a great thing for the homeowners in Brigantine who have qualified for the grant. We do have to put funding in place, but there will be no cost to the City of Brigantine, as all the costs for this will come out of the grant. Any council discussion?
Yeah. Roxanne, on in section 3, we're saying elevation of 6 residences. Wasn't it 5?
It's 6 in total. It was 7. 5 of them are in Brigantine, one is in Pleasantville, and 1 was in Cape May. Remember, this is a joint grant. The first phase was done, as explained by our grant coordinator, Jim Rutella, earlier in the executive session, was that this is an application that the city makes on behalf of other cities, and it depends on who actually places in their application. So the first phase has been applied for by Margate and covered a substantial amount of homes. This is the amount of homes that had their applications in at the time of this grant, and 5 of them are in Brigantine, 1 is Pleasantville, and 1 has been taken away because they already raised their house and have taken themselves out of the process.
Yeah. Well, my question, though, is can we, in Brigantine, bond for a project which is outside of our jurisdiction?
We are really not bonding this, and I didn't look into it. It's just a mechanism in case, we talked about the contracts that are at the end of the agenda. They have to be paid, they're going to be paid by us on behalf of the homeowners, and we'll get reimbursed for it. So this amount will never be bonded.
Well, yeah, I understand the mechanics of it, and we don't expect that we'll ever have to sell notes or bonds. But, I mean, maybe, I don't know Fred's bonding background, but can we authorize bonding? Can we have a bond ordinance that deals with a project that is outside of our jurisdiction in part?
Well, this went through the bond council, and he had all the information. So I'm sure if it wasn't legal, not legal, but not authorized, he would have prohibited us from doing it. So I don't have an exact...
We're the lead agency.
We're the lead agency.
So it's a financial position we're in terms of
Just the middle.
working with, now I would assume that the funds would come in through us.
Technically, the way it's supposed to really work, we should get the funds in advance.
Right.
This is just to give protection in case there is something that happens. The homeowners are on the hook for the money. There could be, the money's on the way, FEMA approved it. It's just a matter of when FEMA cuts us the check. It's just a mechanism in order to manage the cash flow.
Roxanne, is the appropriation, the 942, is that inclusive of all 6 properties?
Yes. And it is only, there is a portion that the homeowners are responsible for, and that's not included in the 942.
Okay, any further discussion? Okay, seeing none, could we have roll call, please?
View,
Yes.
Reardon,
Yes.
Haney,
Yes.
DeLucre,
I'd feel better if we had certainty that our bond counsel in reviewing this understood that all 6 properties are not in Brigantine, but we're willing to take that chance. Vote yes.
Sarah,
Yes.
Simpson,
Yes.
Mayor Gunther,
Yes.
motion carried.
Okay. Resolution 2018-174 is award of contract for alarm maintenance. Resolution authorizing award of contract to Atlantic Coast Alarm, Inc. for maintenance and service of fire and security equipment. And this should not exceed $39,900. Could I have a motion and a second, please?
I'll make that motion.
Any discussion?
Sorry, who seconded it?
Second.
Second.
Thank you.
Seeing none, could we have roll call, please?
View,
Yes.
Reardon,
Yes.
Haney,
Yes.
DeLucre,
Yes. Yes.
Sarah,
Yes.
Simpson,
Yes.
Mayor Gunther,
Yes.
motion carried.
Okay, Resolution 2018-175, we are going to pull from the agenda. Okay, Resolution 2018-176 is award of contract for Waterworks materials. And this is a bid. They were received on the 14th of September for replacement parts to maintain the city's wells. And this is contract is for 12 months, and the specifications, the city can exercise 2 one-year extensions, and it's granted to Maine and Core LP based on their low bid. Could I We have a motion and a second, please.
So moved.
Any
Second.
discussion? Seeing none, could we have roll call, please?
You,
Yes.
Reardon,
Yes.
Haney,
Yes.
DeLucre,
Yes.
Sarah,
Yes.
Simpson,
Yes.
Mayor Gunther,
Yes.
motion carried.
Okay, Resolution 2018-177 is award of contract to the Brigantine Ace Hardware for miscellaneous parts and supplies. Could I have a motion and a second, please?
Make that motion.
Second.
Any discussion? Seeing none, can we have roll call, please?
You,
Yes.
Reardon,
Yes.
Haney,
Yes.
DeLucre,
Yes.
Sarah,
Yes.
Simpson,
Yes.
Mayor Gunther,
Yes.
motion carried.
Resolution 2018-178 is award of contract for project management services for the FEMA grant to Jim Rotella Associates in an amount not to exceed $4,500 per property owner who elect to elevate their house.
41.
Mayor, that was revised late this afternoon,
41?
4,100, yeah,
Okay. $4,100.
yeah.
We have a motion and a second, please.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Seeing none, can we have roll call?
You,
Yes.
Reardon,
Yes.
Haney,
Yes.
DeLucre,
Yes.
Sarah,
Yes.
Simpson,
Yes.
Mayor Gunther,
Yes.
motion carried.
Resolution 2018-179 is award of contract for project management services for the FEMA grant for Czar Engineering in an amount of a lump sum of $3,600 per property owner who elect to elevate their homes. Have a motion and a second, please.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion. Seeing none, can we have roll call, please?
You,
Yes.
Reardon,
Yes.
Haney,
Yes.
DeLucre,
Yes.
Sarah,
Yes.
Simpson,
Yes.
Mayor Gunther,
Yes.
motion carried.
Okay, next we move to Resolution 2018-180, award of contract to replace the roof at Public Works Department and Municipal Building at 14th Street. And this would be, this was a bid that was received on September 13th of 2018 for roof replacement. And it is the lowest bidder was DDS Services of Sewell, New Jersey, based on their low bid of $338,329. We have a motion and a second, please.
So moved.
Second.
Third.
Any discussion? Okay, seeing none, can we have roll call, please?
You,
Yes.
Reardon,
Yes.
Haney,
Yes.
DeLucre,
Yes.
Sarah,
Yes.
Simpson,
Yes.
Mayor Gunther,
Yes.
motion carried.
Next, we move to our consent agenda. We have the VFW raffle license number 866 and the Fall Family Fun Fest request. We have a motion and a second, please.
So moved.
Second.
We have roll call.
You,
Yes.
Reardon,
Yes.
Haney,
Yes.
DeLucre,
Yes.
Sarah,
Yes.
Simpson,
Yes.
Mayor Gunther,
Yes.
motion carried.
Okay, are there any council manager reports?
I just have one, Mayor, something that was brought to our attention in the executive session by our grant coordinator, Jim Rotella, that there's another round of applications for the raising of homes, elevating homes. And if folks are interested, and they maintain the federal flood insurance, and they're interested in actually learning about the process or applying, we ask that maybe they contact the city clerk's office as soon as possible. I believe that the application needs to be completed sometime in November. So Jim actually is, Mr. Rotella is pretty good with facilitating and helping people to get through the weeds of such a process. So we just want to bring that to everybody's attention.
think he said October 31st.
October 31st? I thought it was November.
It's due, you said by the end of October.
But he has to have time to work on it.
Oh, he has to have time to work on it. Okay, so I'm going to say again,
He has to apply by November 30th.
okay, so that,
Did you get that on the website?
Yeah, I was,
Yep.
gee, Jesus.
that's it.
Walk over me.
Great minds.
This won't change.
And once again, this is what we commonly refer to as the last chance grant for folks for the fourth time who did not apply for elevation grants after all the outreach, but it's also available for second homeowners as well. So it's a little bit different than the other grants, and it is obviously intended to elevate homes to stop repetitive losses in areas that are prone to flooding. Okay, at this time, are there any other council reports?
I just want to make a comment on the Cultural Arts Commission has their Scarecrow Contest. That the applications had to be in by October 1st, right, Joanne? So by Friday, okay.
Mike already won.
All right.
Mike's in charge.
And then they have to be up by, we want them up by 10th so we can judge them by the 20th at the Fall Fest, right, Joe? All right, great, then I'll let you comment on it. Besides that, I just want to say a great job this past weekend at the tailgate by Brigantine Chamber of Commerce and John and all the public safety departments and all. It was a fabulous day, and it was great to see. There's a big request for more of those days.
Okay, that's a good segue, Joanne, into the public portion. So anyone who would like to address council on any issue, please step forward and state your name for the record. Yes, Jim.
Jim Raschiel, 1301 Ocean. First of all, thanks for getting the signs taken down. I appreciate that. But my subject today is about the dog park. Mr. Serra and Mr. Reardon and Mr. Doring came out to the dog park, I guess it was late June, and discussed a lot of the issues with the 8 o'clock bunch. And first of all, we're all appreciative of the support that the city gives us, the grass cutting and, the bags and the garbage collection and, all the maintenance that goes on there. There were 5 issues that were pointed out that we had thought could be addressed. None of those issues have been resolved. In addition, we had talked about, coming up with some kind of a plan for the long-term surface of the dog park and maintenance of that. And I just wanted to follow up and not try to resolve that here clearly, but provide some avenue for some further discussions on, getting some issues and additional issues resolved.
Well, I think the biggest issue that was in the dog park was the drainage.
Right.
And actually, Public Works went down and put in a series of French drains, which has actually helped the drainage significantly. Like most people I've talked to down there said that it's been a lot better.
Absolutely.
Next thing, and actually John and I had just talked about this too, because we had looked at putting sod in that one area where the dog tunnel is.
Yes.
But one of the things that we had explained too is we wanted the heat to die down, so this way the sod would have an opportunity to take. So that's something we actually followed up on, is now that we're moving into fall, to start moving forward on that. And the other thing we spoke about was the gazebo.
Right.
And I talked with John, and he's going to actually schedule some time. And I don't know if you said you had one or have one we can put down there?
We have another gazebo. We got to see which one's in better shape.
Okay.
And then we'll be putting or repairing one down there. Yes.
Yeah, I don't know that we were looking to have it replaced, but just some minor repairs. Some of the boards are missing and loose.
Yeah.
Yep.
When we looked at the condition of the gazebo, we actually thought if we had another one that was in better condition, it would actually be more cost-effective and better for the dog park to actually put the one down there that was in better shape.
Okay.
We looked at different surfaces. one of the things that people had really asked for is the pea gravel. But when we did some research with especially Ocean City, who uses it, they actually had some issues where the pea gravel was going into the dog's pads and having to be surgically removed. Galloway uses bar sand, and I had actually put it out to the people in the dog park about using bar sand, and a number of the senior citizens said that they felt that they would be unstable on the sand and were worried, and actually asked if we could just keep the grass and obviously maintain it a little bit better, keep the water down, but make those other improvements. Which
I've become convinced that grass is the best surface for dogs.
Yeah.
Obviously, there's some maintenance issues involved, and it's difficult to do that maintenance while keeping the dog park open. There's only one dog park in Brigantine.
Right.
I've seen townships that have, two separate dog park areas, and they rotate them to be able to maintain the grass. Clearly, we can't do that.
And actually, it's funny because you brought that up, but I was hoping that we could actually set something like Wildwood has a dog park on the beach, and when we talk about maintenance, if we have to shut down our dog park for a period of time to put it on the beach, but actually with the DEP, we're not able to do that because they don't want the dogs on the beach. So that's one of the things, because that would be an easy fix, because you could fence off an area, use it in the off-season, allow the park to heal and to grow, and then have it come back, and then it would make it viable, but the DEP is not allowing us to do that.
Something that occurred to me after we had our meeting is that, Brigantine owns a golf course. So I assume there's a groundskeeper, I don't know if that's the correct term,
Sure.
that maintains that. Possibly we could get that individual to at least come down and take a look, maybe make some recommendations as to how we can maintain a grass area while still keeping the area in use, which clearly you have to do it at the golf course all the
keep the dogs off.
Well,
With this little sign there.
the one thing that universally that the people at the dog park have stated is that they really don't want the dog park closed for an extended length of time.
Absolutely.
To maintain. There's got to be a better way. Even if you fence off a certain area, while after you sod it, and put a temporary fence.
That's a good idea.
Around a certain area, possibly.
Absolutely.
Something like that. The other issues are there's some holes in the dog park. There was that one faceplate on the locking mechanism that had fallen off and was never replaced. That door is now not operating.
Oh, okay. I was unaware.
The access door to the large dog park is we had to go back to the rope system to hold that shut. So.
Yeah, I know we've repaired actually that lock system a number of times, and for whatever reason, either the programming fails, or I know it's been damaged, or it's been broken.
I don't know if the fact that the faceplate was gone for a length of time led to the failure of that, but it's not operating right now. It hasn't for weeks, a couple of weeks.
No, I'm glad you brought that to our attention. If John, you could take a look at it, and we could get that up and running. All right, thank you.
First time we heard about it.
Okay.
Thank you, Jim.
Thank you, Jim. Thank you.
Don't you have a nice gazebo behind your house? You can donate. Sure.
Any other public comment? Yes, Jerry.
Jerry Seach, 1201 Ocean Avenue. I just wanted to take a moment to thank and commend the owners of CTOT for their 27 years of service to the citizens of Brigantine. I know they're going out of business, but I think all of us who have been touched by them or in some way indirectly influenced by them should say thank you to them. And I just want to say that.
Thank you, Jerry. Any other comment?
Member of the Brigantine Beach Cultural Arts Commission. We are now hosting our third Scarecrow Contest. We're inviting you to become friends on Facebook. We do have a page on Facebook, and we're showing some of the scarecrows that we had from last year. We're inviting you to tour the island as they go. We have community organizations are going to be in the CER, and other businesses. We have 5 that we have known. We're going to be getting our entries in by Friday, so we invite you to be part of that. We also invite, if you want to make a scarecrow and add it, just make sure that if you put it in a building, it's flame retardant and no straw. Right, John?
Correct.
Okay. We are going to have 3 artists do an artistic judging, and at the Green Team Fall Farm Market on the 20th, we're going to have a People's Choice Award. So we've had voting the past 2 years, and now we're expanding it. So we look forward to this, and we're seeing more and more people are excited about being a part of this fall holiday spirit. That's message number 1. The next thing that I'm going to invite you to is also the Brigantine Green Team Farm Market, because hopefully we'll be cutting the ribbon, I hope, of the garden. I don't know if you've noticed any of the work that's being done in front of the library.
Oh, yeah.
I applied for a grant in February as my computer died. We got the grant in on time, thanks to John and Lisa, and we got the grant. So I have a $2,000 grant. I named it Restoration, Conservation, Education, the 3 shuns. We lost bushes when the lady hit the steps. We had no steps for years. It serves as a beautiful backdrop for the Green Team's farm market, but grass was, it just wasn't looking good. So I thought, well, if we got some money from Sustainable Jersey, which we got the $2,000, it came in, and we waited until this time of year to put the things in. So I have to thank John Doring. He has been my guardian angel, my support. He has, I say, oh, what do I do next? I'm a certified master gardener, okay? I'm on the garden club. When I say I'm certified, I put all the hours in. I am not a master at this. This is the first time I've ever attempted a project like this. So the master gardeners of Atlantic County do get service hours for that. The garden club, I did not feel I could ask them because we're laden down with the beds, but because they're my friends and they've been out there working with me too. And we're going to be donating and putting plants in. Green Team members have been out there. So this week, in 1 week's time, John delivered the soil last Thursday. A friend of mine from the silent generation, as he said, he was born in '46, and I'm a baby boomer. We put out the first round of the soil, and I did keep up with them too. We have now completed the 2 berms with the help of certain garden club members, and I'm posting this on my web page or my Facebook page and sharing it because I want people to see how we grow as a community of volunteers. Our soil should be done this week. When I return October 20th, we're going to be doing the planting, October 13th, we'll be doing the planting, and hopefully it'll all be finished, ready just for the mulching on October 20th. So we hope you come out and see, and if you feel like helping me dig and shovel a little bit, I'd be welcome to have your hands. It's really an awesome thing. We're preserving, we're putting in things that'll be easy maintenance for our grounds crew because the land is owned by the city, the library is by the county. I'm a library volunteer. That's kind of how I got started with this. I do the memorial pots. But the bed around the sign also is in need of repair. So today we pulled those stones out and we finished one border, and we're going to finish that piece around the sign, which is the county sign on city land, so that the Public Works gentlemen can continue to mow and make it look as attractive as it should because it's one of our historical buildings. So I invite you to come join me, and hopefully we'll have it done by the 20th. So come watch us grow.
Thanks, Joanne.
That's why, yeah. The other piece is the education. I have to tell you about that, because I also work with the schools. As a library volunteer, I'm going to be doing some teaching, and we're going to get the kids all to do service projects with that. So that's restoration, conservation, education, because we have to sink the fact that our environment is so fragile with our young people, so they will continue to do it when we're a little bit over the hill. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks, Joanne.
What'd you do with that apple? It's been a long time.
I know. I have 3 of them. You want one? Isn't that a great lesson?
It is.
That is so profound.
It is.
Third graders, my GT kids, the library, it just brings it home. We live on that tiny little...
You did every element of a good lesson in less than 5 minutes. That was great.
Absolutely. I actually might use that in class.
Okay, any other public comment? All right, seeing none, I'm going to close the public portion. I'm going to ask for a motion
Right,
to
so
adjourn.
one-
Wait a minute.
Can I make an announcement real quick?
Oh, wait a minute,
Hold
hold on.
Hold on.
Okay.
We got a couple more
Start
things.
with Lynn.
The Hand Up Brigantine, formerly the Blankets for Brigantine, we're having our basket auction this Sunday at the Laguna. The doors open at 12:30. It's $25 at your food and a sheet of tickets. So we have really good prizes. So we work really with hand in hand with True Spirit Coalition as well. So it's a great cause if anybody's around on Sunday and looking for something to do.
Thank you, Lynn. Andy?
As tonight, we know we talked about a lot on dune maintenance, and without this gentleman for the last, I think he was, as long as you have been mayor,
24 years.
24 years.
Beach replenishment.
Frank Lobiondo, Congressman Frank Lobiondo is retiring this year, and I think it's only right that our dune system probably is as good as it is today is because of Frank Lobiondo. Like the mayor just said, there's 6 replenishments there. So I'd like to make a motion to name the North End Beach after Congressman Frank Lobiondo, and I'm going to need a second.
I second. Being it's in the second ward, how about
All right,
that?
I'll let him out.
Okay, Upper East Side.
Upper East Side.
Okay,
What this would entail is the placing of a plaque at the, somewhere in front of the seawall in that area, John, designating that area Lobiondo Beach. As you know,
flagpole?
yeah, somewhere down in that area would be great. And if you could get that together, we would like to have the congressman come visit before he officially retires to do that, because his efforts have been phenomenal in terms of being
off the charts for Brigantine.
Absolutely.
Need
We've
roll
got a
call.
motion and a second.
Wait, no, one
Okay.
quick thing.
Now we need roll call.
Vote on this.
Oh, okay, sorry.
Okay.
Sorry, go ahead.
View,
Yes.
Reardon,
Yes.
Haney,
Yes.
Jalukri,
Yes.
Sarah,
Proudly.
Simpson,
What did you say? Proudly.
Oh,
Yes,
okay.
proudly.
I thought you barked. Yes.
Probably.
Mayor Gunther.
Yes.
Motion carried.
Did you say probably?
I said proudly.
Proudly.
Listen, I could tell you, like, the congressman, anytime we've ever needed him, he's always been there. No matter where he's been in the world, if he's on the Congress floor, if Brigantine had an issue, he got back to us right away. Like, and that's the expectation of government, someone who is responsive and someone who's there. So I am proud to support this.
All right, tonight in our consent agenda, we approved the Fall Family Fun Fest, which will be following the annual Republican Club Halloween Parade on Sunday, October 28th. The parade starts at, lineup begins at 12:30 in St. Thomas parking lot, proceeding down to 26th Street Ball Field, where the Fall Family Fun Fest will be taking place. The Chamber of Commerce has organized, along with a lot of other, their supporters, their sponsors, and the police and fire are all going to be taking part in this. It's going to be a fall fun family day. Hope all can show up.
That's the long route.
Yes.
We're taking the long route.
Long route. Got to be able to
I'll make a motion.
To adjourn?
Yeah.
Absolutely. Do we have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Once again, I want to thank everyone who participated in the meeting this evening, and thank our viewers at home for tuning in to Their Government at Work. Have a good night.